Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Peter Mueller, and I, along with my Scale Hub colleague, Susanne Richter-Wills, will be leading today's webinar, Beat the Talent Shortage with Impact Sourcing. Susanna will begin by introducing and summarizing how impact sourcing, coupled with collective intelligence, will benefit your overall talent pool mix, advance your ESG initiatives, and importantly, deliver faster and more accurate outputs for your customers. With the stage set, I will be speaking with our guest, Gina Romero, the founder of Connected Women. Gina and I will discuss her real-world experiences with impact sourcing and how using collective intelligence has been beneficial for Connected Women's mission. Note that today's webinar will be recorded and will be shared with all registrants. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat threads, either in LinkedIn or YouTube, and we will answer in the Q&A session during the last 10 minutes. With that, let's get started. Passing off to you, Susanna, to begin the presentation.
Thank you very much, Peter, and hello, everybody. Yes, I don't know about you, but I see every day in the news nowadays topics about staff shortages, staff retention, and everything else. So it seems to be everywhere. According to studies, and which one you believe, around 50 to 75% of organizations struggle to find the right talent. Now, if you look at these numbers here, that's from Manpower study of recently, late 2022. And what they also say that the most sought after professions are those related to IT and data. So it comes to no surprise that this topic is very close to our heart in the business we are in. And what we would like to do today is really look into the area of document and data processing and how an approach based on collective intelligence and impact sourcing can benefit that. Because is there really a talent gap, or are we not just looking in the right way, and are we just not looking at the options available to us? So hopefully we find some answers to that today. And I personally very much look forward to the interview with Gina later on, which will bring some of the topics very much alive for us. So looking at the businesses, the business drivers that organizations have, many of these are impacted by a lack of the right skills and talent. So we know that customers expect a reliable and fast service. Not having the right skills, not having enough people to do that will impact service levels, and therefore will customer satisfaction and customer retention be impacted by that. Every organization is looking at being fast to market, and when the growth comes, hopefully with a good new product or good new solution, they want to be scalable. Again, if the talent is missing to do that, to support it, then of course it will hinder growth. And last but not least, changes. So change is unavoidable. And if change comes, an organization has to be agile. Again, the right talent, enough talent plays a major part in that. So having talent, having the right talent and using it is something that, of course, is important for an organization and for the business drivers. Now, is there talent out there? And where is this shortage actually coming from? Let's start looking at it a little bit when we look at the demographic side of things. So we hear about aging populations, and we brought here like two examples of those from some of the more industrialized countries out there. And of course, I live in one of them, and Japan is another one where Scale Up is very active. And we see very much here an aging population and a pyramid slowly changing and, of course, increasing the issue of talent shortage. On the other side, we have two examples, and one of which we will hear about a lot more today when Gina's joining us, is organization or is countries where the population is very young and there is really a big talent pool growing up as we speak. So, talent is out there, but can it be tapped? Looking at the other side of it as well with demographics is the population growth. So the same countries again, you see that, of course, the Asian population doesn't come from nothing. It has to do with population growth, and you see that there's some very healthy growth in other areas of the world to be tapped into. So this could be a key to really approaching a talent shortages. But what are organizations really doing out there at the moment? So when we look at some SSON surveys, we see that a lot of shared service centers executives, for example, are putting their hopes into automation to support their processes and to support their staff. Now we see a lot of advances in document and data processing in this area. As we know, machine learning is there, and we see really advances being made in many areas, not just in the non-voice part, but also, of course, in the voice part equally so. But we also see that automation is not 100%. And of course, by adopting automation and adopting new technologies, that demand for IT and data-aware staff is increasing yet again. So it's not the one-stop solution for the problem, but it's certainly something that organizations, for good reason, are going to, in order to at least eliminate part of the burden they're having by not having the right talent. On the other side, we see also from the surveys and different studies, the new work initiatives appearing, especially post-pandemic. Retention of staff is becoming more challenging, and the way that staff want to work is changing. So the organizations are spending time and effort into implementing techniques and measurements and tools to allow remote working from home. Of course, that also means reducing office space for them, which is the result of it. But it also shows a change in the way of thinking, that a remote approach is something which is more on people's mind, and also something that is becoming something that will be a part of a business strategy going forward. But at the same time, as worrying about having staff or not having staff and how to retain them, many of the leaders nowadays are also asked to focus on ESG topics. Now, ESG, of course, is a major topic and very important, but is it not too much to ask of leaders to focus on that at the same time that they're struggling so much? Well, not necessarily, because you can combine the topics in some way. Now, again, studies show that the many business leaders say when it comes to ESG, they most struggle about the S, the social aspect, the more, how can it be a social way of working? How can you be more inclusive in the way of working? How can you have your sourcing being a more social sourcing? So this very much leads to the topic of impact sourcing and having access to varying resources of different ability, different locations as a part of business process. So if impact sourcing or social sourcing can be a solution to the shortage and of staff, but also at the same time of the the ESG gaps that companies are experiencing. Why is it so difficult, and what are actually the barriers of adapting it? Well, there are some barriers, and some of them, or they all are real, and some of them seem to be very, very difficult to overcome. On the one hand, it is the topic that many leaders bring up is our tasks are too complex. So we have business processes, we cannot work with talent of varied ability, of talent with not native speakers, of talent which is not in the office and we can control directly. So the topic of how to tailor the task to the talent is certainly one of the barriers of adopting a more wider approach to sourcing. At the same time is the area of connection. We saw that people are getting ready for a remote working from home. But when you talk about global talent, then the whole area of bandwidth is coming into it. Devices are coming into it. How do you actually ensure that you can connect that remote and that global talent in some way or form? And if you have captured both of those, if you manage to solve both of those problems of having to tailor tasks and to connect, then the one and the most important and the most critical one is the data security and data protection. So this is something that, you have regulations like GDPR and, whatever it's called in different part of the world. You have regulations related to an industry. You have a high uncertainty about what data can be given out to a remote working environment. So this is, of course, something that which is a hindrance, and we try to solve, or not solve it today, but we can try to show a solution impulse and show some examples how this can be overcome with a combination of collective intelligence and impact sourcing. So those of you who've joined us before heard me speak about collective intelligence before, and I'd like you to bear with me as I once more explain the concept and put into perspective of the impact sourcing element of it. So we as Scale Up are one of the leaders in the world for collective intelligence solutions. And this means in the area of the data and document processing. So not for everything, of course. And for us, collective means we are pooling things. And the one thing we pool together is artificial and human intelligence. So we're combining that into outcome-based services to actually aid our customers and partners with their business processes. So this is where we're coming from. And what's very special about that is the human in the loop element of it. So the way in the creative intelligence you approach the human side is with crowdsourcing, and therefore you pool a vast amount of talent, and a big talent also in the area of impact sourcing organizations. So when you look at the human in the loop element of it, then we are able to work with individuals, we'll be able to work with partners, we'll be able to work with the talent of our customers and partners, of course, in order to tailor the actual crowd to the needs. Now, the one thing about crowdsourcing is that when you work with a crowd of any kind, you need to do things differently. And you need to reduce complexity for one, because you want to have parallel working streams. You want to be able to scale in a fast way. And so, you bring complexity down, and you're also looking at data protection in a different way. And this really aids, again, the way of getting access to these pools of people out there. Now, we won't be able to cover all the techniques involved in collective intelligence today. I would touch on three now, but of course, you're very welcome to look at some of the previous recordings or our YouTube channel where you see some explainer videos. But let me try to explain how we can make collective intelligence relevant to impact sourcing or the social sourcing or inclusive sourcing challenges and barriers. So first of all, one of the main techniques of collective intelligence is microtasking. What does that mean? So when a collective intelligence organizations like ourselves is tasked with the need to make the business process tasks available to the crowd, we break them down and we call that microtasks. So by breaking them down, we actually make it easier for staff or workers to be onboarded. So by microtasking it, you actually reducing complexity in such a way that a person can actually be trained within minutes, a few hours, in order to become fully active within a business process. So the complexity is taken care of by the artificial intelligence, in the sense that's breaking it down and is pulling it back together when the human in the loop has done their task. So the microtask has a major benefit that in many cases it aids data security, data protection topics, because by microtasking you often take the context away from the task. For example, if you're working with a document and you are, say you have work in onboarding or an insurance claim, and you have a document that is handwritten and you want to extract the data from that, you will find a lot of personal data on it. One of the techniques may be snippeting, which means you're breaking the text down into small areas. By doing so, one person may see a date completely out of context, or many dates from different documents, from different parts maybe of a business case. A date alone is out of context, and therefore makes this GDPR, HIPAA, ISO, etc. compliancy much more easier to achieve, and opens up actually the ability for many more use cases to give to global talent and to involve partners with. And by doing microtasking, in some sense, it also aids the area of working from home and remote working, because the bandwidth requirements are so much less. And at the same time, also the ability to use different devices is increasing a lot. So by having the collective intelligence approach brought into the social and impact sourcing element, it enables really a lot of use cases to be brought to a global talent pool and involve people of varied ability and locations and languages and skills into a business process that otherwise is deemed impossible to have external help with. Now that's all about the theory, and what I would like to do now is hand over to Peter and to Gina to really bring this topic a bit more alive with the partnership that we have with Connected Women and how this really applies to their impact sourcing mission.
Thank you, Susanna. Great introduction, and it's super helpful to sort of get the basics and understanding of how impact sourcing and collective intelligence work together. I think now it's great to go more into the real world of it, and so I want to introduce our guest, Gina Romero. Gina is an entrepreneur, community builder, and a technology advocate who is the founder and head of special projects at Connected Women, which is a socially responsible AI and digital task outsourcing community that aims to improve the lives of women through meaningful online work. Over the course of her career, she is centered on community and entrepreneurship with technology at the heart of everything she does, with the focus of her initiatives and work being to harness technology for the success of women. She is self described as tech smart, business savvy, yet down to earth, a connector of people and ideas with the overarching goal of helping others succeed. Gina, it is an honor to have you with us today. Welcome.
Hi, Peter. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me. A topic that's close to my heart.
Thank you, Gina. So I wanted to start by asking you to, first of all, please introduce Connected Women and especially your impact sourcing mission with Connected Women.
So, Connected Women has been a long journey. I think many entrepreneurs can relate. It's not something that happened in a short period of time. In fact, Connected Women was launched around 10 years ago in Singapore. And well, the objective was really to help women use technology better. My mum comes from the Philippines. She comes from a very remote town in the Philippines. And I grew up in the UK because my mum went to the UK to be a domestic worker back in the 1970s. And so I grew up with a lot of Filipino communities in the UK where they had left the family behind, very often left kids behind in the Philippines just because of lack of work opportunities here. And the interesting thing is that I spent most of my life in the UK. I moved to Asia in 2010 and launched Connected Women there, really focusing on a completely different aspect, community building, technology, advocacy, and suddenly realized that there were so many Filipino women that were still leaving their homes and families because of lack of jobs. And, it suddenly struck me. And it had not really occurred to me ever to come back to the Philippines, to be honest, at that point in my life. But it suddenly struck me that this problem is decades old and it's still happening. And there must be something that we can do through technology to help at least solve this problem for some women. So I came back to the Philippines, started up Connected Women. Like most entrepreneurs, I understood the problem very well, but I didn't know what the solution could be. And explored different ways that we could try and bring opportunities home to the Philippines, and eventually stumbled on some very inspiring other models that we'd seen where they'd successfully built impact sourcing communities, and realized that this is something that we could do.
It's wonderful. And it's, the entrepreneurship side of it, solving the problems, is obviously so interesting for everyone to hear about. So it's just a wonderful story, and it's a, great mission that you have. For us, and I think for the audience, it's really interesting to hear about, bringing a topic forward in real life with some real life examples. Are you able to share how Connected Women has provided such positive changes to some of the women that you work with day in, day out?
Yeah, so we have a really big community now. It was actually, we were shocked by the growth. We didn't expect it to grow so quickly. So we have around 100,000 members in Connected Women since we launched in the Philippines well, it was really 2018 when we actually launched. These ladies come from all different backgrounds. I mean, it's a very, very diverse community. But they have one thing in common. They're looking for flexible, accessible work that they can do from home, ideally. And they have all different skill sets. But where we find probably the most fulfilling work is really working with the grassroots. So, I mean, the ladies, we built a program called Elevate IDA. This was launched in partnership with UN Women at the height of the pandemic in 2020. And it was just a response to so many members reaching out, just saying they couldn't put food on the table. And lots of them could put food on the table before the pandemic, but at that point in time, they were completely lost. And so we knew we needed to deploy very quickly a solution to help them earn. And, some of these ladies were displaced from good jobs, as this has happened all over the world, of course. And some were already, probably living close to the poverty line, and surviving on one income in the family. But then, the husband now lost their job and they have no income at all. So it's been really heartwarming because through this program, we've trained almost 1,000 women. And, the surprises are the women who really do well and love the work. So we have a fisherman's wife. Her name is Geraldine. She's never worked in a formal job. She's always taken care of the home and not really had an opportunity to build a career. She's in her 40s, and she has no background in AI or tech, but we were able to train her in the most basic annotation skills, and she just had a knack for it. So she has really become a specialist now, and she's able to not just augment her income, but she can actually she's one of her proud moments is that she's actually helping her children who are in high school become more comfortable with technology. So she's encouraging them to look at opportunities in remote work and tech. And Geraldine actually came from one of our most beautiful islands in the Philippines, Palawan, which was really badly hit by a terrible typhoon. So that was why we deployed the training to that particular area. Let me tell you one more.
Please. Yeah, please.
So another one is Marilyn, and she was actually a single mother who was an overseas worker in Hong Kong. So she moved to Hong Kong, obviously, to provide for the family. Similar story to my mom, but unfortunately, decades later, still happening. And when the pandemic hit, she had to come back to the Philippines. She wanted to be with her family and everything else. So, but she was actually trained as an accountant and didn't really work in that field at all. And so she was able to transition those sort of skills that she had, the dormant skills, and become a data annotation specialist. And she's one of our best annotators on the Scale Hub projects.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, the training aspect of it for you. What are some of the, bridging that gap and actually going out and doing the training? What have you learned have been some of the best strategies to, get the technology in front of them, and how do you coordinate that? And that link is probably the specialty that you have. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so we really want to help those who need the most help. And so the challenge with that particular sector is they're not putting their hands up to take a career in IT or data annotation. I mean, right. Really, the only thing that's top of mind is providing for the family and putting food on the table at that point in their time, in their life. So it isn't. We work with local government units and partners, program partners, and we really go to those who have the most potential, but are in the most need. So most of the time they join the training because they just want to earn. That's the driver. But then when they join the training and they start to understand what it is they're learning and the potential of this whole industry and what they're contributing to, then it suddenly sparks a light that, wow, this could be a career for me. They're not always thinking about themselves in that way. So it's really good. I mean, the challenge is, of course, with that approach, you can't expect 100% of people to become data annotators. So we come into it knowing that some will want to try it, some will want to explore it. It might not be for everyone, but we're really looking for those top 20-30% who really have the potential, and we want them to take it further. We don't want them to just have a very entry-level career. We want the ones who have a spark for something more and are curious about the technology and what we can do with it.
Yeah. Very interesting. Fantastic. So when you've been working with Scale Hub with us and the collective intelligence side of it, how has the approach with collective intelligence, how has that helped your mission, the overall, mix with connected women? How has that helped your work?
Well, it's really, really important that we work with partners. For us to work with globally recognized like Scale Hub is really game changing. Not just because we combine our workforce and the technology and the expertise that you all have in your team, and of course the annoying processes, which is so important. But I think it's also, we can't deliver some of these solutions in the setup that we have because we're fully remote. So our women are working from home. Some places have less connectivity access. So we need to be innovative when we work with partners and make sure that we can bridge the gap that Connected Women can't fulfill. So the security aspect for us is so important because we can promise with confidence to our clients that that is taken care of. And, just the expertise and the collaboration in terms of the process being very, very smooth and the onboarding process and everything. So, I think it's really the only way to succeed is to leverage your own strengths, right? And work with partners that complement those. So it really is a perfect partnership, and we're really looking forward to scaling it further.
Well, this topic and your work is super inspiring, Gina, and how the real world example, and I think a lot of folks that I've spoken to, just understanding what impact sourcing is, number one, right, and then number two, where it actually comes into practice and the reality of it is just wonderful to hear, and I think your story and the growth that you have seen in the past years is just really, really wonderful to learn about. Thank you for sharing. I think we'll probably have a few more questions from the audience, but just wanted to thank you for taking the time to share a little bit with us today.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go back to Susanne now to wrap up a few of the concepts we've discussed, and to kind of take us towards the summary and some Q&A at the end. Go ahead, Susanne.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Gina. This was, every time I hear that story, especially when it brings the examples, it's so close to my heart. I think this is fantastic to see, and of course we have the pleasure every day to work with very inspiring partners. So I would like to take the last few minutes to share two more examples really of the work we do in the area of impact sourcing and what we see as some areas that hold a lot of promise towards helping organizations with their talent gap. So the one thing we see is that there are some very good initiatives in Africa, in Central and Southern America when it comes to bringing youth into IT and into data processing. So we are fortunate to work with some very interesting organizations there, some very fresh partnerships where we're hoping to bring the right, help them, I guess, bring the global organizations work to them so they can be supportive. But it's very interesting to see the youth coming in there and, of course, taking part in global projects, gaining experience, and therefore becoming more applicable for the roles they can take further. So some very, very inspiring talent out there that we meet every day. The other one we see, and this is also, you don't have to go so far away from, and we saw some of the organizations or some of the countries where we saw the talent gap. So we've seen some really good initiatives of bringing staff of varied ability locally into work. And this is really driven by new work initiatives, inclusivity initiatives. And again, we are able to support that with especially this micro-tasking, gamification approach of reducing complexity and therefore allowing the very skilled, very ability people to come into different projects. So there's many more of them. If you follow our blog, you will see some other stories appearing more and more about the kind of partners that we are lucky to work with. So to summarize that, I think what we wanted to bring to your attention today is that there is a possibility out there to overcome the talent shortage, and impact sourcing is nothing to be afraid of, because I think we gave you an impulse today to show, look, the whole topic of complexity. Yes, the business process can be complex, but there are ways to reduce complexity. There are ways to ensure that the connectivity is enabled. So low bandwidth, different devices, really remote areas of the world can be easily connected when you approach it in a different way. and especially data protection, because we know this is the biggest hurdle for most organizations, that they don't think they can actually involve that talent out there. So hopefully today you saw that with collective intelligence like approaches, it is possible to tap into it. And I hope you saw that with the inspiring story of Gina and Connected Women, that there's so much talent out there that not only is ready, is able, is willing, but you also make a real impact in their life by giving them a chance to work with you. And so hopefully, we see some questions from you now, and dive a little bit deeper before we close today's topic. Peter, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I'm looking right now. So, yeah, I see a few coming in. First one is, do you experience an increase of requests for solutions like right now with impact sourcing elements?
Yeah, I can take that I can talk for Europe or EMEA, and we get a lot of these requests at the moment appearing from the financial services and insurance sector. So there seems to be a lot of focus on the ESG, whereby the social element has in the past been about being more inclusive in their recruiting, but organizations will take that further. So we get a lot of ask to help them to investigate how can they include workers from other continents, like Asia, like Africa. And this is something that we see a lot.
Yeah, and I would say, from North America perspective, we've seen this more at conferences, more impact sourcing as a topic coming up. And a lot of it, like I think you said, insurance industry, but also, some of the technology or BPO technology companies that we work with here, they're even bringing it into the mix with some of their own outsourcing to get more inclusive workforce, just to deal with the fluctuations, right? And exactly what we talked about today. So totally have been seeing this in the past 6 months. Another follow-up here that I saw, and this might be for you as well, Susanna, is the biggest hurdle that you're seeing in Europe, and maybe I can comment in US, but for example, data protection concerns, I think it says here, you have solutions for that. How do you deal with data protection? I think we've talked about it, but maybe expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, so of course, first of all, the connections themselves, let's put it that way, the end-to-end connection has to be secure. So this is something that you can ensure with encryption, you can ensure with having ISO certified processes and so on in place. That taken away, you still have the topic in data document processing. What about the content? So I think the majority of issues or concerns are related to the content itself being shared. And so when I talked about the microtasking, there's different techniques out there to ensure that the content is protected in a way, as I said, by ripping it apart, by taking it out of context, protecting it. So the snippets, anonymization, scrambling, for example, are different techniques to ensure that the task can still be done, but the context is irrelevant at that point, and therefore also protected because it's just not there.
Okay, that's great. I see another one here. This one's for Gina. Gina, I don't know if you can come back on camera. What are the most common misconceptions about your organization?
Thank you, Peter. Am I back on camera? I think I am. Well, I think one of the misconceptions is that data annotation is really low-level work, sort of mindless work, if you like. But it's actually, there's a lot of essential skills involved. Critical thinking, attention to detail, and of course, collaboration and communication, and all the things that are part of process management are still important. But, the good thing is, although it's a specialism that anyone can learn. So, by providing these types of jobs, I think, we're really tackling a lot of real world challenges. We're bridging the digital divide, which is only getting bigger if we don't tackle it head on. We're bringing women into tech at scale, which is another global discussion. But not just that, we're actually helping them contribute to the future of work. And I think, that's one of the things that our ladies are most proud of. They don't want to be contributors. They don't want to be beneficiaries of aid. They're not looking for handouts. They want to be productive members of society and feel proud and build careers, and really participate in, or not just participate in, the digital economy, but actually help to build it. And I think that's what's really amazing. I mean, we want adoption at all levels for digital, but we can't achieve that unless people understand it, and getting them involved in it at every level is how we can really level the playing field and make it as accessible as possible.
That's great, Gina. I think there's a follow-up for you even. So this kind of touches on sort of the workers themselves. And the question is, how can I ensure that using a solution or provider labeled as impact sourcing, that I'm not just profiting from exploitation of disadvantaged people, communities? And furthermore, how would I know these crowd workers have decent working conditions and receive a fair payment? How would they know that?
Yeah, that's such an important question. I think, the micro work community is possibly one of the most vulnerable group of workers. They're not employed often. They may not find it easy to register as freelancers or self-employed. They may not even understand how to do that, or why they need to do that. So they often don't fit into any segment that is protected. And so they're overlooked. And, well, Connected Women is actively championing women's empowerment in the Philippines. As I mentioned earlier, we launched our program Elevate IDA, which is the data annotation training, in partnership with UN Women. So we're actively participating in discussions with government, with private sector, to really advocate for opportunities for women's empowerment through ICT. We're also pushing for gender responsive business practices, not just for this segment. And, we have multi awards from reputable organizations like UN Women, ITU, MIT. So I think, just like any supplier that you choose to work with, you really need to vet and make sure that any impact that is being claimed, I guess, is tangible and can be quantified. And it's not difficult to do, of course. Just make sure that you do the due diligence as well. And I have to say, when I first met Scale Hub and I had a conversation with Torsten, one of the first things that he asked me was, how much do we pay our women? How do we make sure that they're well looked after? And I was really impressed by that, because it's often not the first question that a potential client or partner asks you. So that we appreciate that. So do ask those questions and make sure that people can back up the impact that they claim they make.
Absolutely. Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah, I just which is very similar to that. So how do we, and I think you answered that very well, Gina. So the question was, how does do we have a means at Scale Up to measure the impact of our partners? Is it real, and what thresholds are we having? So I think you mentioned that. So we start off with, generally, when you work in crowdsourcing, one of the misconceptions is it can't be fair on the workers, whatever the workers are, if they're individual talent or in an organization somewhere. So we are one thing that we do is ensuring a fair pay. So we have a really, really strict rules, and the technology supports that, so we can be sure that good money reaches whoever is working and wherever they're working. And one of the things we're looking for, of course, is how, if you work with a partner, like you already said, like Torsten is our CRO, and like what he asked you is, we want to make sure that if you work with a partner like yourself, that the money reaches the workers in the in the amount it should reach them. And so that's one area that we of course we're looking into. We're looking at very closely at the programs that are being run, that they're real, like you mentioned the examples that you gave, and with the UN initiatives and so on. So there's different ways that we ensure, of course, any partner that has an impact sourcing mission, it is for real before we consider them a partner for that part of our business.
I think we have a few more questions here. Somebody's asking about, let me read it here. Thank you for your inspiring content today. how could this approach, I guess meaning impact sourcing and collective intelligence, help me as an organization to act more inclusive when it comes to my own staff? So I'll take that one. I think that, you know, collective intelligence as a approach, and and obviously in conjunction with impact sourcing, but just collective intelligence includes impact sourcing. So it removes the complexity. So it gives you the faster onboarding, regardless of the input channel, be it from impact sourcing groups or your own staffing. So different teams can be mixed in and give you the best approach for your needs and customized for your needs in a certain sense. But simultaneous to that, and we've talked about a lot of these topics today, the data protection aspect, of course, is where all of this always leads in every discussion we have. In this day and age, it is probably the most important aspect for all business work that we're doing. So we're enhancing that, and collective intelligence as a topic is enhancing that to distribute this across different countries, different groups, such as with impact sourcing, or different divisions within even your own organizations. And then you add to the mix the whole work from home, which of course has expanded exponentially during the COVID times. And so your IT footprint is less. It gives you more flexibility, and it gives you the opportunity to really think about all these different components that otherwise would be super complex. It is available to you in the mix of your daily work, as you're doing these types of tasks. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, I would like to learn more about these solutions. What's a good next step? Well, okay, yeah, I mean, obviously just reach out to us, myself or Susanna, and we can go through these solutions and bring you closer to home with understanding, really looking at samples and how the different approach, including impact sourcing, can be part of the mix. Any more questions? I'm looking here. I don't see any more. Do you see any more, Susanna?
No, I think it was also probably a good final question in that sense. So I think one thing we didn't talk too much about is I'm sure many of you are inspired by what Gina was saying. So when we talk about having a crowd in the collective intelligence, we can tailor it. So if of course, if you want to work with the connected women, then this is something that we can always make sure that you can make an impact by supporting initiatives that Gina is doing. And we would love to work together, have many more of those stories like you shared today with the women, the impact that we made.
Yeah, wholeheartedly endorse that idea. Gina has been wonderful to work with. She's a fantastic partner to us, and we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today, Gina, and tell your story. All right, well, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank
you. Thank you, Gina. Thank you. Wonderful. We appreciate it. That concludes our presentation. We will follow up with recordings, and of course, feel free to reach out if there's any questions. We're happy to help. Thank you very much.